It is still unclear how exactly the current authorities want to spend the loans from the EU's SAFE programme, because the Polish application containing 139 projects is still secret. This is despite the fact that the application for loans worth nearly €44 billion was submitted to Brussels at the end of November last year. Now, the deputy head of the Ministry of National Defence promises that the government will disclose the list of projects sent from Warsaw. It will be made public in the coming weeks after consultations with the European Commission. This is a programme that is of great importance to all Poles, and obviously these tasks must be made public. But today we have a situation where officials in Brussels know what we want to buy, while the Polish public still does not. Added to this are questions about the budget deficit and its real impact on defence spending. Tusk's government argues that loans from the EU's SAFE programme will be a panacea for the country's financial problems. The government said that these would be additional funds, but in reality they will be money that we will use to fill the budget deficit generated by this government in the defence budget. To put it bluntly, the defence budget has been reduced by the amount that we will obtain from the SAFE fund. At the moment, it seems that this programme is primarily beneficial to the Ministry of Finance, who can reduce the position known as the Army Forces Support Fund and shift the financing of the Army's armament to a programme financed by the European Union. All the more so because the problems with spending the Armed Forces Support Fund earmarked for financing the modernisation of the Army have not disappeared at all. Last year, the government did not spend 20 billion zloty from this fund. 2 years ago, another 20 billion zloty from this fund remained unspent. I appealed to the government for transparency and for them to finally engage in a substantive debate. But the government is not eager to debate military spending. It also avoids specifics on details of EU loans. The government claims that everything will somehow work out and that everything will be fine. All the doom and gloom from the political opposition is pointless. However, I do have quite serious doubts. I would like to see all these calculations. Poland issued bonds in euros in January at around 3.76%. The Commission is giving a preferential loan at 3 to 4%. We have to ask ourselves the fundamental question as to whether this loan will actually be preferential enough to make purchases based on a list that is currently classified. Another unknown is the financing of agreements negotiated during the Law and Justice government for the supply of defence equipment from the United States and South Korea, because it is clear that they cannot be financed with EU loans. In the United States and South Korea, we are buying with funds from the national budget. After all, we will not and do not finance arms purchases solely from the SAFE. The 201 billion allocated in the 2026 budget is the best confirmation of this. We are dealing with multi-directional financing of these purchases. I think there is no need to look for sensationalism. Won't there be a problem with financing these contracts with the United States and South Korea? Contracts with the United States and Korea are primarily financed from the state budget, and there are no problems with financing them. However, the offset with Korea, for example, is very important here, so that the tanks are assembled in Poland, specifically in Gliwice. The problem is that military equipment purchased outside the EU was supposed to be manufactured in Poland. This was supposed to be the case, for example, with the Korean K2 tanks, which were to be built in Poznan. After Tusk's government took power, the agreement with the Koreans fell through due to the authorities' inaction. The money borrowed from Brussels will not change that. We will deprive ourselves of the opportunity to finance these purchases in the United States and Korea in favor of illusory purchases in the European arms industry, which today has no production capacity to ensure the production of equipment for the needs of the Polish army. They are unable to even meet the needs of their own countries. It is well known that Germany, the country with the strongest defence industry in Europe, is not interested in loans from SAFE. The question is whether this is because Berlin is to take over the production of military equipment financed by EU loans to be repaid by future generations of Poles. The authorities argue that loans from the SAFE programme are a great opportunity for the Polish defence industry, although it is unclear what kind of opportunity. During the Law and Justice government, money went either to the United States or to Korea, but not to Poland. This is a fundamental change. Over 80% of SAFE programme spending will be invested here in Poland, in our country, in the Polish defence industry. The proposal that a significant part of these purchases be made in Europe is, in my opinion, very correct and very reasonable, because Europe has been freeloading a bit when it comes to building defence capabilities, relying on the arms industry in other countries. The government has already announced success. It says that we will obtain the entire amount of 44 billion euros. But let's remember that individual contracts will still need to be negotiated with contractors. And it may turn out that contractors will not be able to meet the strict EU criteria that will be imposed. The problem is that the Polish armed industry does not produce modern tanks or aircraft. The flow of money into a significant pool of funds for European industry, mainly German, French and Italian, will take place because we have no other choice. We will have to buy from them because we actually need products that we are not able to manufacture ourselves. The SAFE program is primarily intended to discipline member states and cut off their defense systems from the United States. So I believe it is in our interest not to allow this to happen, and that we should continue the programs started earlier during the Law and Justice Party's term of office. In addition, the big question is the possible conditionality of EU loans, which the current government constantly boasts about. These agreements will contain provisions on conditionality. Conditionality, as we are well aware, is a political tool in the hands of the European Union. We experienced this in the case of the National Recovery and Resilience Plan, where these funds were frozen solely because Poland was ruled by a conservative government. On the European side, we have a capricious donor who at some point, using the conditioning mechanisms enshrined in the agreements, can say, well, you are not meeting some requirements related to this particular project, so we will withhold the next tranche. We will see if and when the government will disclose the details of the SAFE program loans.